Our first story takes place in 1979 in the suburbs of Tokyo, Japan. It was a Tuesday evening in late October, and 8-year-old Hiroshi was walking home from his after-school program. The sun had already set, and the narrow residential streets were dimly lit by occasional street lamps casting long, eerie shadows between the houses. As Hiroshi turned the corner onto his street, he noticed a woman standing under one of the street lamps about 50 yards ahead. She was wearing a long coat and had long black hair that partially obscured her face. But what immediately caught his attention was that she was wearing a surgical mask, which wasn't entirely unusual in Japan, but something about her presence felt off. As Hiroshi got closer, the woman began walking toward him, and when they were about 10 feet apart, she stopped and asked him a question that would haunt him for the rest of his life.
Am I pretty?
Now, Hiroshi had been taught to be polite to adults, so despite feeling uncomfortable, he nodded and said yes. The woman smiled. He could see her cheeks lift beneath the mask, but then she reached up with both hands and slowly began to pull the surgical mask away from her face. What Hiroshi saw underneath that mask was not a normal human mouth. Instead, the woman's mouth had been cut from ear to ear in a grotesque, permanent smile. The wounds were fresh and bleeding, and her mouth stretched impossibly wide across her entire face.
Am I pretty now?
Hiroshi screamed and ran. He could hear the woman chasing him, her footsteps echoing off the pavement, getting closer and closer. He didn't stop running until he reached his front door, where he collapsed, sobbing and unable to speak for hours. Now you might be thinking this was just a one-off encounter with someone wearing a horrible mask, trying to scare a kid. But here's the thing. Within weeks of Hiroshi's encounter, dozens of similar reports began flooding police stations across Tokyo and surrounding areas. Children and adults were describing encounters with the exact same woman, the surgical mask, the question about beauty, and the horrifically mutilated face underneath. The sightings became so frequent and widespread that schools began implementing buddy systems and parents started driving their children to and from school instead of letting them walk alone. The Japanese media picked up the story, and soon the legend of Kuchisake-onna, the Slit-Mouthed Woman, had spread across the entire country. According to the legend, Kuchisake-onna was once a beautiful woman, possibly the wife of a samurai, who was either unfaithful or extremely vain. As punishment, her mouth was cut from ear to ear. Now she roams the streets, especially targeting children, asking them if she's pretty. If you say no, she'll kill you with scissors or a knife. If you say yes, she'll make you pretty like her, by cutting your mouth the same way. The only ways to escape, according to the legend, are to give her a confusing answer like maybe or you're average, to ask her a question back like do you think I'm pretty, or to say the word pomade 3 times. Apparently she's allergic to pomade. But here's what makes this legend truly terrifying. The mass sightings in 1979 were so numerous and consistent that they caused genuine panic across Japan. And to this day, no one has ever been able to explain what really happened during those few months in 1979. Was it mass hysteria, a real person wearing a mask, or something else entirely? Our second story begins in a Tokyo subway station in 1968. A young schoolgirl, let's call her Reiko, was running late for her train home. It was around 11 p.m., and the station was nearly empty. In her rush, she accidentally dropped her wallet, which slid across the platform and fell onto the tracks. Now, Reiko knew she shouldn't jump down onto the tracks, but that wallet contained her train pass, her student ID, and money her parents had given her for lunch for the rest of the week. So she looked around, didn't see anyone, and carefully climbed down onto the tracks to retrieve her wallet. As she was bending down to pick up her wallet, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold, the rumble of an approaching train. She looked up and saw the headlight of the last train of the night bearing down on her. She tried to climb back up onto the platform, but the platform was higher than she remembered, and she couldn't get a good grip. The train conductor saw her and slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. The train struck Reiko, and the impact was so severe that it cut her body completely in half at the waist. Now that should have been the end of Reiko's story, a tragic accident. But according to the legend, it was just the beginning. Because 3 days after the accident, people started reporting encounters with what they called Teke Teke, named after the sound it makes as it moves. Witnesses described seeing the upper half of a young woman dragging herself along the ground using her hands and elbows, making a distinctive Teke 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 scratching sound as her body scraped against the pavement. And this entity was incredibly fast, faster than any human could run, despite only having the use of her arms. She would chase people, particularly those who were alone at night, and if she caught you, she would use a scythe or knife to cut you in half at the waist, the same way she had died. But here's the most disturbing part of the Teke Teke legend. If you hear this story, if someone tells you about Teke Teke, you have exactly 30 days to pass the story on to someone else. If you don't, she will find you within 1 month and make you just like her. Multiple people in Japan have reported actual encounters with Teke Teke. Security cameras at subway stations have allegedly captured footage of something moving across platforms at impossible speeds, though these videos are always too grainy or dark to make out clearly. And perhaps most unsettling of all, there have been numerous cases of people in Japan being found cut in half with no explanation for how it happened. The legend became so widespread that it spawned movies, manga, and even warnings posted in some subway stations advising people not to walk alone late at night. Our final story takes us to a highway outside of Osaka in the early 1990s. A truck driver named Tanaka was making his regular overnight delivery run, driving down a mostly empty stretch of highway around 2 a.m. He'd been doing this route for years and knew every curve, every exit, every landmark along the way. As he was driving, something in his peripheral vision caught his attention. Running alongside his truck, matching his speed of about 60 kilometers per hour, was what appeared to be a large dog. But this wasn't just any dog. As Tanaka looked closer, he realized with horror that while the body was definitely that of a dog, the face was completely human. The creature had the facial features of a middle-aged Japanese man, complete with human eyes, nose, mouth, and even what appeared to be facial hair. And as Tanaka stared in disbelief, the thing turned its human face toward him, made direct eye contact, and spoke in perfect Japanese. "Leave me alone." Tanaka was so shocked that he nearly swerved off the road. He slammed on his brakes, and the creature continued running down the highway until it disappeared into the darkness. When he finally composed himself enough to call his dispatcher, they thought he was either drunk or having a breakdown. But Tanaka's experience wasn't unique. Throughout the 1990s, dozens of drivers reported encounters with Jinmenken, human-faced dogs, along highways across Japan. The descriptions were remarkably consistent. Dog bodies with perfectly human faces, capable of running at highway speeds, and often speaking to the witnesses. According to the urban legend, Jinmenken are the spirits of people who died in car accidents or were hit by vehicles while walking along highways. They're condemned to run along the same roads where they died, trapped between the human and animal worlds. But here's what makes this legend particularly disturbing. Unlike many urban legends that are clearly fictional, there have been multiple verified police reports of these sightings. Highway patrol officers have filed official reports describing encounters with unidentified animals with human characteristics. Traffic cameras have captured blurry footage of what appear to be large animals running at impossible speeds alongside vehicles. And most unsettling of all, some witnesses report that the Jinmenken don't just run alongside your car, they follow you home. Several people have reported seeing the same human-faced dog in their neighborhood for weeks after their highway encounter, always watching, always waiting. The legend states that if a Jinmenken speaks to you, it means you're going to die in a car accident within a year unless you tell someone else about your encounter. And according to Japanese traffic statistics, there was indeed a notable increase in highway fatalities during the peak years of Jinmenken sightings. So there you have it, 3 of the most terrifying urban legends from Japan. What makes these stories particularly chilling is how deeply they've embedded themselves into Japanese culture. These aren't just campfire stories, they're legends that have influenced behavior, caused mass panic, and continue to be reported to this day. Whether you believe these encounters are real supernatural phenomena, cases of mass hysteria, or something else entirely, one thing is certain. In Japan, these legends are taken seriously enough that they've changed the way people live their lives. And just remember, according to the legends, simply hearing these stories might have consequences. So if you found this video interesting, maybe you should share it with someone else, just to be safe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.